First, thank you for taking the time to listen to the spiel and also to help shape this next new business, which we're temporarily calling NewCo. I might have also heard names Any Stupid Idea or CoreCo Podco. Today, I want to give you the general business description and will, in the end, hope you will have enough ammunition or knowledge to help name CoreCo, the little blue guy in the middle there. I have a history of running through sandcastles. This is my Swami, Brian Burns, who has a wonderful podcast, by the way. It's just a fantastic guide. He says you're like a little kid, you build the sandcastle, and then as soon as it's built, you run through the sandcastle, right, and destroy it. And that's his perspective. But what I believe is I kind of focus on what I'm comfortable with, what I feel I'm relatively competent at, and also what I find to be great fun. And I understand when you're working from zero on a bootstrapped company, organic company, it's like moving a train. So it is a bit of work, and it is a lot. You go through a lot of exciting times in those handful of years to move to that level, but it is really quite fun. I do highlight there on the technology adoption life cycle that what we're looking for, and it consistently have done in the past, is kind of get some technology that's really cool, fun, that engineers love, that customers are angsting for, and get it right when it's getting out of the labs and into true application, particularly in enterprises. And trust me, all enterprises, some of these enterprises are somewhat laggardy, so you'll get them at the later edges. The key thing is, though, that you're looking to move it from that small state while it's still a hot area and be ready for an exit before it becomes passé, before it becomes yesterday's news. And so that, to me, is the, quote, fun stage. And it's really that, taking it from 0 to 10 million during that time is pretty fun, pretty easy. And, the people that make up the company are really passionate, they're very smart, they're into the business. And on the way out, there's all kinds of potential for growing well beyond what we get them to. So the essence of the business, though, is rather than destroy the whole thing, quote, destroy the whole thing, by selling the business and selling every aspect of it, is basically separate the part that acquirers or investors really want from the part that we might be able to keep for future use and reuse by other pods. And that is the CoreCo, right, the center of the business. If you're familiar with professional employment organizations, such as a company called TriNet, which we used in the last business, they provide all the general services of a business, but they're not particular about software services, leading edge software services. And so they basically don't enter into some of the areas that I think we're going to bring strength to, and that's going to be a differentiator for whatever CoreCo ends up being named in the end. The pod is not a single pod at a time. The idea is that you can bring in a pod probably at a pace of once a year. So if a new or nascent pod comes into the CoreCo and it gets attached, we expect it to have something like 2 founders, 1 customer that's paying them for their time and what they specialize in. So it's kind of a proof to ourselves that it's something that customers are going to want. More than likely, they've been through a bit of a thermostat in the past. They realize all the stuff that they don't like to do, the, quote, unsavory stuff. So what we're really looking for with the pods is or what we bring to the pods is basically a focus on the stuff that they don't want to deal with. If you think in terms of Michael Gerber with a manager, entrepreneur, and technician, each being necessary aspects to be a successful new business, perhaps they're only strong on the technician side. As a matter of fact, our archetype number 1 has a very strong technician, a very visible thought leader. But they're not interested in performing some of the manager functions or the entrepreneurial functions, and they really don't mind handing that off and sharing it, and again, in return for equity share. Perhaps they've struggled for a couple of years with a thermostat-oriented business that develops to a certain size and then down again, and they realize sooner or later, like, I guess we're not really doing sales, or I guess we're not hiring people and growing them internally with training and cultural development. So I think those are the sorts of pod candidates that we're looking for, the ones that probably had a little bit of pain, and they start to understand that it would be good to take on some connection with a core that will help them move forward. But fully understand when people start off on their own, they're like, yeah, I can do this. And the brand new freshy pod is probably not the absolute best. On the right side, you see systematize. I'll switch to the next slide a little larger. But basically, it's rather than shoot from the hip pods that have no processes and structure and so on, and they're figuring out every time there's a crisis, we'll kind of put in place all of the necessary things and elements that are going to be needed over the next few years as they develop to be a $10 million company or more. Here's a little more detail. You can welcome to pause and take a look at those if you like. The key thing with CoreCo is that it's long-lived with no plan to exit the core, right? It's just going to mature over the first couple of pods, and then it's going to hopefully evolve as needed to stay current with the time, new software systems, new practices, following the laws, possibly scaling out broader than just software services, possibly having more than let's say three concurrent pods at a certain point in time. But those are to be seen in the future. We think 3 is a nice, handy number. We keep our business kind of tight and keep everybody moving smoothly. I won't go over the details here too. You can pause the slide if you like, but crucial things we're going to see a little bit deeper. Here we give you an idea of some of the tech that we're looking for, right? Right now the hot stuff, serverless, machine learning, blockchain, security, right? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, I say that blah, 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 but I'm totally sincere. Those are the hot areas, and those are the areas that right now it would be very practical and easy to develop one of these pod-sized service businesses and get very specialized in and just kind of move with that. Each one of them is early adopter enough at this point that they probably have a good runway of 5 to 7 years without fear of becoming a commodity. Geo-free, all these things. Again, I'll just let you look, but the idea is that we're looking for some consistency between the core and the pods so that we can have like a generalized view of how the world should work at the core level and then a specialized view of how the world works for the pods. What we're also giving the pod is the ability to focus. They get to focus on exactly what they love, the thing that they're passionate about, develop a team that is especially focused. We're big believers in John Warlow. Really, truly believe that you have to have a differentiator and really be strong in one thing. And if you can do that, you're going to probably be a lot more valuable than the generalized businesses that we see so often, especially in the service realm around Washington, D.C. It's a lot of what I call with the beltway bandits that basically whatever the hot item is now, we're doing it, and that's like the pretenders that we see. So enter as a small boutique, but having at least one customer, preferably having more than one founder. We do not really want to have the untested or we'll say confrontational founder that can't seem to develop a company or a team. Notice that the exit is probably going to be 50 or greater, so they have to be kind of comfortable with that sort of vision of their own business. And then we think that the primary exit in most cases is going to be an acquisition, a larger company acquiring the small company. And the key thing here is where the core will be tested is, can the core detach the pod, have the pod be recognized as valuable by the prospective acquirer, and be able to smoothly have that pod integrated without having to give up much of the core to support the transition of the pod. So that's part of the model that's untested, and we'll see how that goes. But that's the exciting part for this, to see if we can pull that off and have a smooth, pure value delivered to an acquirer or an investor, and still maintain all of the value that we've developed inside the core as well. I won't go over the contingencies too much, but you can imagine there's going to be cases where everybody on day one is always happy and excited, but then some things don't work out. The pod doesn't deliver. The pod and the core have different management styles and don't get along. Whatever it is, we're going to try and protect all parties so that we'll have the various contingencies documented and understood before anyone commits to anything. This will be just one more way of filtering out potential misfits in the early stage before we actually sign anything. So when a pod attaches to the core is going to own at least 25% of that pod, and you can take it at its lowest value, hopefully raise it up, and then be able to reap the rewards of basically a long-term investment. The remainder is going to stay in the founder's hands as they can use as they would typically to help the business grow as they need to. While they're attached to the cores, I don't know if the statement is very crisp, but the core is basically going to have decision-making power and be able to drive things, provided they deliver along a schedule of growth and success that both the pod and the core agree to before getting started. And again, kind of done that before, and it's always a little bit gray, but it's like we're going to hit this much in revenue, we're going to hit this much in profit, we're going to have this big a company, we're going to have this many customers, whatever it is that you agree to that you're setting as annual targets, that as long as you're close to it enough that it's all agreeable, then we continue on in that model. If the targets don't get hit, the core is ready to basically acknowledge that they failed and pass it back to the core or to the pod. And I think that's crucial to make sure the pods feel that they're not going to give up control just to have those clowns in CoreCo destroy them. And then in other terms, the managing member is what the core will be for the pod while the pod is attached. So we hope to find, since we're going to have multiple pods simultaneously, we want pods that are at least not explicitly competitive and hopefully are complementary to one another. The relationships and develop as is helpful. We have a thought that if a pod, and it's very common in a small business scale, that you either have bench or not enough people, right? You're either short of staff and people are getting burnt out, or you have too many people and you're just burning up money while people are not billing. And the potential for being able to share resources and pasture is greater by having a family of pods that can actually support one another as they're growing. So just take a quick look at one archetype. This is probably the most common one. Strong technician or thought leader, overweight as a technician, loves the craft, totally passionate, can attract people just from that kind of enthusiasm, can easily influence others. And if you've ever been on the delivery side of this sort of thing, you know what I'm talking about, where basically you can walk in the room and be the one that's so enthusiastic about a technology and so knowledgeable that people just listen and do their stuff. And that's what we're looking for the pod founder. That's technician driven, So, and I can look at the businesses I've been associated with. It's like certainly describes number 6. Certainly describes Stelligent. There were some very strong presences there, and I think that's crucial. And then again, those same individuals, if they're savvy enough, will be willing to give up the unsavory stuff, parts of the business, to some people that are going to be more interested in making the business grow. I'll skip some of the other archetypes for now. And that's probably good enough. Just real quick, what's in the name? Just a note that, we're going to be naming CoreCo here. And to me, CoreCo is kind of like the back office company, right? It's going to matter to a degree because we're going to have to attract pods in the future. We'll probably even create the first pod, just so you know, launch it ourselves. But the reality is that, it just doesn't have to be all that fancy or anything like that. So I'm really not going to angst over this much longer. The pod names, however, are probably going to matter a whole lot, right? Because we're going to have to actively sell them and move them briefly from being not known at all to being very desirable in just a few years. And their name is going to be more important, but the core could be called Cardboard for all I care. I think it's, actually, that's not a bad name. Anyway, hopefully when you look at this laundry list of things, you can pick from them. By the way, there's so many names on there, you can ignore them all. Just put down whatever you like, or just pick the top 3, and that's all you have to do. Okay. Thank you very much again. And if you have any questions, criticisms, comments, feedback, whatever, you know how to reach me. Thank you. Bye.